Today, I'm going to tell you a story that will warm your heart at first glance but will haunt your dreams once you learn the truth. A tale that pushes the limits of the human mind. In a quiet street in Missouri, in a charming pink-painted house, lived Dee Dee Blanchard and her daughter Gypsy Rose. To all of America, they were symbols of hope, patience, and sacrifice. Dee Dee was a mother placed on a pedestal of sainthood by society, seemingly having dedicated her entire life to a daughter struggling with severe disabilities and terminal illnesses. Gypsy was a child confined to a wheelchair, battling leukemia, suffering from muscular dystrophy, developmentally delayed, and clinging to life through a feeding tube in her abdomen. However, on the morning of June 14, 2015, when a chilling post appeared on Dee Dee's social media saying, "That bitch is dead," the world learned the horrifying reality hidden behind that pink house. It turned out that the wheelchair was a prison, and those medications were doses of poison administered every single day. Today, we open the massive file on how love turned into the greatest instrument of torture in history, examining it second by second. Gypsy Rose's life was built on a fiction from the moment she was born. Her mother, Dee Dee, suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy, one of the most insidious and dark psychological disorders in the medical world. In this condition, a caregiver deliberately makes someone under their care, usually their own child, sick or invents incredibly convincing false evidence of illness to gain attention, sympathy, and financial aid. Dee Dee's dark journey began when Gypsy was just an infant. Gypsy was actually a perfectly healthy child, but for Dee Dee, she was less of a daughter and more of a golden key to the benefits, donations, and attention she would strip from the world. Dee Dee was a genius at manipulating the medical system. She would reset Gypsy's medical history every time by claiming it was lost in the waters of Hurricane Katrina in 2005. And every time she took her daughter to a new doctor, she had a new terminal illness diagnosed. Why would a mother imprison her own child in this hell? For Dee Dee, it wasn't just about attention. It was a massive source of income. They were the mother and daughter of the year. They received free Disney vacations from charities, visits from celebrities, a free house custom built for them by Habitat for Humanity, and constant cash donations from the local community. But the cost of this luxury for Gypsy was more devastating than anyone could imagine. To keep up the appearance of illness, her mother would regularly apply local anesthetics to Gypsy's gums to make her drool, which led doctors to believe her salivary glands were overactive and surgically remove healthy glands. The dozens of unnecessary medications eroded Gypsy's tooth enamel, causing all her teeth to turn black, rot, and fall out. Gypsy's head was shaved with a razor every week to maintain the image of a chemotherapy patient. Most chilling was the feeding tube. Despite having a healthy stomach and the ability to chew normally, Gypsy was forced for years to be fed through a hole in her abdomen with a syringe. Why wouldn't a person just get out of that wheelchair if they knew they could walk? Gypsy was condemned to this silence by the systematic physical violence, starvation punishments, and psychological terror inflicted by her mother, who told her, "If you ever get out of that chair, the police will put you in jail, and no one will believe you because you're mentally challenged." As time passed, Gypsy grew. She began to notice the natural developments in her body, her hormones, and her sexual identity. Her mother had kept even her age a secret. While Gypsy thought she was 15, she was actually in her early 20s. Dee Dee gave her heavy sedatives to prevent her from becoming an adult and forced her to wear childish clothes. However, one night, while Dee Dee was in a deep sleep, Gypsy opened the door her mother had forbidden and managed to secretly access the internet. This was the first and largest crack in her dungeon. When she began researching her own symptoms, she realized she didn't have leukemia, her muscles weren't wasting away, and she didn't need a wheelchair. One night, when she stood up in her room and took a few steps, her entire world collapsed. Her mother was not a hero, but a warden. It was during this period of awakening and rebellion that she met Nick Gojon on a Christian dating site. Nick was a young man on the autism spectrum with poor social skills and dark fantasies in internet subcultures. To Gypsy, Nick was her only Prince Charming, who could rescue her from this prison. The relationship between the two quickly evolved into something obsessive and morbid. In their secret messages spanning thousands of pages over 2 years, Gypsy described every torture and every unnecessary surgery her mother inflicted on her. "Please get me out of here. I don't want to die. She's going to kill me," she begged. Nick, with his pathological love for Gypsy, was ready to do anything. The messaging eventually turned into a planned murder plot. Gypsy knew her mother would never let her go alive, and that if she tried to run, the consequences would be worse. The only way out was the physical elimination of the warden. On the night of June 14, 2015, Nick arrived in Missouri from Wisconsin as planned. Gypsy opened the door silently, gave Nick the necessary knife and gloves, and then hid in the bathroom. Pressing her hands over her ears with all her might, Gypsy waited as her mother was stabbed 17 times in the next room. That silence was actually the explosion of Gypsy's 24 years of suppressed screams. The couple, who fled after the murder, were caught shortly after thanks to that infamous post on Dee Dee's Facebook page, which Gypsy had posted specifically so her mother's body would be found. When police entered the home, they found Dee Dee's lifeless body but thought Gypsy had been kidnapped because her wheelchair, oxygen tanks, and all medications were still in the house. When Gypsy was caught and brought to the station, walking in on her own 2 feet, it caused a shock unprecedented in history. At first, everyone thought Gypsy was a monster. However, as the trial began, the narrative shifted completely. When photos and videos of the years of medical torture Gypsy endured and the records of thousands of unnecessary doses of medication were released, the world began to wonder who the real victim was. The tide of the case changed when Gypsy told the court, "I feel more free in prison than I did in that pink house with my mother. At least here, I decide when to eat, when to walk, and which medication not to take." Even the jurors couldn't hold back their tears. Gypsy Rose was sentenced to 10 years for second-degree murder, a relatively low sentence given the details of the crime, as even the prosecution acknowledged she was a victim. Nick Gojon was sentenced to life without parole for committing the murder. When Gypsy was released at the end of 2023, she turned into a pop culture icon. Now, I want to ask you the real jarring question. Is it a lesser crime for a mother to physically and mentally shatter a child for 24 years under the mask of affection, burying her alive, than the act of murder itself? Was Gypsy's act one of revenge, or the final cry of a victim who had no other choice to survive? If your healthy teeth were pulled every day, your stomach pierced for a tube, and your hair forcibly shaved, how long would you wait to open that door for the killer? I expect you to join this ethical debate in the comments. If you want to hear more dark and mysterious true crime stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.